Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1130, Wednesday, May the 13th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, well, as you know, it is Wednesday, and that is the day, of course, during the week when I have chicken. Every Wednesday I have chicken, some kind of chicken. I haven't decided what I'll have tonight, but I can assure you it will be chicken. And I will also be taking out the trash. Every Wednesday I have chicken and I take out the trash. Now, let's go ahead and get to the news of the last 24 hours. Well, it looks like the social justice warrior resistance judge, Emmett Sullivan, has delayed the Department of Justice order to dismiss the case against Michael Flynn. Sullivan wants to allow an amicus briefs. Well, what is that? That means friends of the court. That means friends of the court. In other words, let me put this in real terms. That means that deep state anti-Trump friends of the coup plotters get to have a few days in court to grandstand and beat up and punish Attorney General Barr. That's what it means. Judge Sullivan is going to allow a bunch of deep staters, anti-Trumpers, to come into court and argue against the ruling made by Attorney General Barr to dismiss the Flynn case. Now, why would Sullivan do this? Well, it's pretty clear. He's a social justice warrior, part of the resistance judge. That's why. Because throughout this case, I mean, certainly he had to understand, as Sidney Powell's made it pretty obvious to him, what the corrupt prosecutors were doing. And he just let it go on. So this should not surprise us. Now, I expect that Attorney General Barr will have a response. And I expect that will be that he will start dropping more damning evidence to further prove why his decision was the correct one. In other words, this is likely going to backfire on Judge Sullivan and anybody stupid enough to go into his court and try to argue against Barr's decision. Because there is much more evidence that has not yet been brought forward. And my guess is now Durham and Barr and Jeff Jensen will make sure that some more of that evidence finds its way into the media, and I assume the media that will actually report on these types of things. And so, again, I think that this will just be a big backfire. This is pretty disturbing, to be honest with you. I mean, Michael Flynn's been through an awful lot. It's time to put this thing to bed. And the fact of the matter is, Judge Sullivan gets nowhere if the Department of Justice is saying that they're not going to continue any further prosecution. That means there's nobody to prosecute the case or to continue to work the case. They're beyond the prosecution point. They're obviously at the point where Flynn had wanted to pull back his guilty plea. But still, there is no one now from the Department of Justice on the case. They've dismissed it. So what's he going to do? Have court hearings and have no prosecutors? Nobody from the Department of Justice there to make their case? Or to comment on any of the rulings or anything that's going forward in the case? I mean, there is no rational reason why Sullivan would do this, other than a political stunt. That's all it is. It's a political stunt by Judge Sullivan to let these anti-Trump, anti-Barr deep staters come in and just have a couple of days to beat up on Attorney General Barr and Michael Flynn, by the way. That's really all that means. This can't make Attorney General Barr very happy, and I expect he will retaliate, and he'll do so by probably embarrassing Judge Sullivan. Again, he'll do that by releasing further evidence that backs up his decision. And you got to wonder what Judge Sullivan is thinking, or if he even is thinking. Again, as a never-Trumper, he's probably blinded, like most never-Trumpers are. I mean, these people hate Trump so much that they're not able to have rational thoughts anymore. Again, you can clearly describe Trump derangement syndrome. It literally is a disease. It's a brain-eating disease. When you get it, you become stupid. That's the only way you can rationalize this. But there you go. You know, I don't know what to say any beyond what I've just said. I mean, there you go. Boy, oh boy. Messed up. That's why it's important to vote. Because these, people that you vote for and appoint judges. Judges are pretty important. If there's no other reason in the world why you think you should vote, if there's one reason why you should absolutely go vote, it's judges. Judges. You never know. You may be facing one of those judges. Keep that in mind. Well, over the past 24 to 48 hours, there's been a flurry of reports over what documents they were that Rick Grinnell delivered to Attorney General Barr. And the popular consensus is that he delivered the names of people who were unmasked, or the names of the people in the Obama administration who did the unmasking, or both. I'm thinking it's both. Now, I do expect that Grinnell will release these names, but I do understand that there's a process that has to be gone through before he can do that. But I expect he will release those names, especially now, since Judge Sullivan has made this ruling. That would certainly be all the motivation that Rick Grinnell would need. So, I understand it's going to take some time for this to happen, maybe a week or two. But I do expect it will happen. And we're going to find out who the people were who did the unmasking, Susan Rice, and also the people who were unmasked. And we already know a lot of them. One of them certainly is Michael Flynn. But from what Devin Nunes said, Trump and members of his campaign. But I think we're going to find out there's a lot more people, such as Obama's political enemies, people on the right. Where do we see that list? You won't find any liberal Democrats on that list, I bet. Let's check in with Paul Sperry. He's been doing a lot of reading of the transcripts. He's way ahead of me. I'm just now getting started on my third transcript. It looks like Paul Sperry is well ahead of me. So let's go ahead and check in with Paul Sperry to see what he's learned from the transcripts he has read. Well, he has learned that Mark Elias testified that he sent the bills from Confusion GPS to the rotten Reverend Clinton campaign, and specifically to Robbie Mook. Now that's interesting because Mook denies knowing anything about the dossier. He was on a TV interview in October, and at that time said didn't know anything about the dossier. And his claim throughout that he didn't know anything about the dossier, just like Podesta, just like Sussman, just like all these people around the rotten Reverend Clinton and her campaign, they're all saying we didn't know anything about the dossier until it was released by BuzzFeed. Now, they're all lying their asses off, and we all know it. And now we know that Robbie Mook is lying his ass off because Mark Elias just dropped on him in his testimony saying that he sent the bills that were coming in from Confusion GPS directly to Robbie Mook, Hillary's campaign manager. Now, they're paying all this money for the dossier, and it's their October surprise. What do you think the odds are that they're paying all this money, that they're getting the bills sent directly to Robbie Mook, yet they're not interested at all in what's being learned? They're not interested at all in what they're getting for their money. They're just forking over the money. The bills are coming in. Mark Elias sending them over to Robbie Mook. He's getting the bills, paying the bills to Confusion GPS, but not the least bit interested and what material they may be digging up on Trump for their October surprise, which they would need to know if they were going to use it as an October surprise, unless they wanted to pretend that they were just as surprised as everyone else. But I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense. What makes a lot more sense is that all these people are lying. Keep in mind, these interviews are all from 2017, 3 years ago, when most of these people thought none of this stuff would ever come out. But it is coming out. And they're all being caught in their lies. Now, here's another problem that Robbie Mook has. In his most recent deposition with Alpha Bank, Christopher Steele says in sworn testimony that Glenn Simpson told him that the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign did know about his work. And he was told that by Glenn Simpson, who also lied a lot under oath in his testimony. Additionally, Paul Sperry has learned that Christopher Steele's handler, Mike Gaeta, says that he made out a 302 after his first meeting with Steele on July 5th of 2016, and also after Steele was terminated as an FBI source. So where are those 302s? Now, after Steele was terminated as a source, his business partner, Christopher Burrows at Orbis, contacted Gaeta. What did they talk about? And what was Christopher Burrows' role in the coup? Steele told Gaeta that his information was unverified. But the FBI used it anyway. Unverified, and said he couldn't vouch for any of his sources. But here you go. And the FBI passed it right on up the chain, and of course they used it to carry out the coup. That's why a lot of them are going to jail. Here's a good question for you. Who was Susan Rice's lawyer that provided the explanation for Susan Rice's Cover Your Ass letter on the about the January 5th meeting? Who was Susan Rice's lawyer that provided the explanation for her CYA letter? Susan Rice's CYA letter. Well, it was her lawyer. You know, Kathleen Rumler. Kathleen Rumler, also known as Obama's lawyer, or most often referred to as Obama's fixer. Kathleen Rumler is Obama's fixer. So why is Obama's fixer stepping forward? Why did she step forward to respond to Chuck Grassley's accusations on behalf of Susan Rice? Why was Rumler defending Susan Rice's Cover Your Ass letter in response to Chuck Grassley? Isn't it convenient that Obama's fixer lawyer just happens to be Susan Rice's fixer lawyer? Who is Kathleen Rumler really defending here? I'm thinking Obama. Fox News is reporting that John Durham has the names of the unmaskers, thanks to Rick Grinnell. And also that Rick Grinnell has the sole authority to release the names if he wants to. We're also hearing that the list is massive. Massive is the word that they use to describe the amount of unmaskers and unmaskings that took place. This would include, of course, many unmaskings of Michael Flynn, going all the way back to 2014. Well, Ty Clevenger says he is a source that tells him that the NSA is in possession of communications between Seth and Aaron Rich and WikiLeaks. He has sent a letter to Rick Grinnell. Ty Clevenger has now sent a letter to Rick Grinnell asking him to release these documents from the NSA that show the communications between Aaron and Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. Well, Joe Biden, was asked about the January 5th meeting in an interview yesterday with George Stephanopoulos. And of course, he played dumb, which is pretty easy for Biden to do because he's kind of dumb and a little ugly on the side. Now, and not totally mentally competent. Again, this is why Joe Biden will probably get away with everything. He just claimed he can't remember, and nobody will doubt that. So probably everything that was being discussed was way over his head anyway. But he was there in that January 5th meeting. Yes, he was. He was there, and he knows what they discussed. And Stephanopoulos, to his credit, did not back down when he asked Biden the first time. Biden tried to spin his way out of it, pretending he knew nothing. Then Stephanopoulos came back and said, wait a minute, you were in that January 5th meeting. Certainly you were in the meeting. We know that. It's in Susan Rice's CYA letter. So certainly you knew something about the Flynn investigation. And then he just kind of said, oh yeah, well, I mean, I knew about, that there was an investigation going on, but, and then he blah, 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 word salad into 10 other subjects. Stephanopoulos came back at him a third time, and then a fourth time. In fact, he never really pursued anything else in that interview. He kept pushing Biden on this January 5th meeting, and Biden continued to play dumb, which he's pretty good at. But there's going to be a lot of questions asked of Joe Biden about this meeting in the future. It's not going away. And it's just a matter of time before these left-wing media outlets are going to have no choice but to start asking, what was Obama's role? What was he doing? Now, they're not going to be honest about it, obviously. They're going to spin it any way they can, but the fact is they cannot ignore the story. They'll try to ignore the story, but they simply will not be able to ignore the story. Because this Michael Flynn thing is blowing up. It gets bigger and bigger every day as we get more information and as the drama continues to play out. Again, Judge Sullivan probably didn't do the deep state really any favors by prolonging this thing. The best thing he could have done for the deep state is get this thing over with and let it die. But maybe he's well, it's not going to die, but why give it more fodder? Why throw more, wood on the fire at this point? Especially, something that's not going to go in their favor. Obviously, when you look at the events that occurred between January 4th and January the 10th, those 6 days, 7 days, those 7 days, when you look at the events that went down, it's not hard to figure out what happened on January 5th in that meeting. Clearly, Obama gave a directive for the DOJ and the FBI to go ahead and pursue Flynn. The previous day, a field office had said, well, we've looked into Flynn, there's nothing there. The next day, they're in Obama's office, and when they walk out of his office, there's a full-fledged investigation back into Flynn, and then all the other things come out. Now, again, I think that this is what Yates and Comey are counting on. They're wanting to count on the fact that they can say, hey, we just did what the president told us to do. I think that Silly Sally and Comey will throw Obama under the bus, thinking that's their ticket to get out of jail. To say, well, yeah, we did go ahead with his investigation into Flynn because Obama told us to. He directed us to. believing somehow, I guess, that they think that that makes it okay. But it doesn't. If Obama directed them to do something that they knew was illegal, unethical, they were obligated to say, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I can't do that. It's illegal. And it's unethical. And if you try to force me to do that, I will have no choice but to resign. It's like when Nixon ordered his attorney general to fire the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox. And his attorney general said, I can't do that, but if you're going to order me to do that, I'm going to have to resign. And he did. So then Nixon went to the deputy attorney general, said, I want you to fire Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor. He said, I can't do that. And if you order me to do that, I have to resign. And Nixon said, good, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. So then he went to the Solicitor General and said, I want you to fire the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox. This was all known as the Midnight Massacre, by the way. And that was Judge Bork, would later become Judge Bork. And Bork says, well, you are the President of the United States, and I am the Solicitor General, and I am now third in line, and the other two have just resigned. You are giving me a direct order. That's a lawful order. But I don't think it's ethical. I don't know if it's totally lawful at this point, other than the fact that I'm getting the order from the President. And I have been advised that if the President gives me the order, then it's lawful. I'm not so sure that's true. I just don't know. But you are giving me the order, so I guess, Mr. President, what I would have to do is carry out the order, and then I would resign. And that's exactly what he did. He carried out the order. He fired the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox, and then he resigned. The Midnight Massacre. So I don't know that maybe Yates and Comey feel like this is leverage that they have because they believe, well, if I tell them that I'm going to finger Obama, if they try to lean on me, they'll back off of me because they really don't want to take the country down this road where they try to implicate the president in a crime. And rather than do that, they'll let it go. I kind of think that that's the thinking behind Comey and Yates. That's their ace in the hole in their mind is, hey, I've got the president. I've got Obama. You go after me, I'm going to give up Obama. And you can't take down Obama. He's a former president. And we don't do that in this country. I think that's what they're counting on. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think Durham gives a damn. Nor does Attorney General Barr. Because as I said, the correct course of action for them would have been to have said, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I don't think that's legal. And it's not ethical. I know that. So if you're ordering me to do that, I will have to resign. That's what they should have done. But here's where they have a pretty big problem on this issue as well, is that Silly Sally Yates said that she was surprised when Obama started telling her about the Flynn Kislyak phone call, indicating that she had no knowledge of it. If that's true, then what you're saying here is that the FBI and we assume because Clapper and Brennan were involved as well, that the FBI, the CIA, and the White House were running this rogue so-called investigation / operation to get Flynn, going completely around the Department of Justice, when this all should have gone through the Department of Justice. That means that you would have had an illegal operation running out of the White House without going through the Department of Justice. And so that's another problem that I don't know if anyone's even looked at yet. Well, I'm sure Durham's obviously looking at that. Now, something else I didn't mention earlier about Michael Gaeta from the Bruce Orr transcripts is that Bruce Orr had several conversations with Michael Gaeta. And at one point, Bruce Orr tells Gaeta, he says, hey, I know you're getting this information from Steele, and I just want to follow up and make sure that you're actually doing something with it. I want to make sure that you're actually moving this information to the FBI headquarters and making sure they're taking some action, they're doing something about it or doing something with this information. This is what Bruce Orr is telling Michael Gaeta, Steele's handler. And Gaeta's like, yeah, I'm passing it over to the main headquarters at the FBI, and I got a guy there I'm talking to, and they're getting the information, and it's going through the process, and yes, they're definitely acting on it and working on it. That's what Bruce Orr was saying. Bruce Orr also said, though, that contradicted himself on another occasion when he was asked under testimony. He said that he really wasn't sure what was being done with the information he was passing off to the DOJ. But when he talked to Gaeta, he didn't just say, hey, I want to make sure that something's happening with this information. He actually went a little bit farther than that. Or actually told Gaeta, he said, me and my bosses want to make sure that you're doing something with the Steele dossier. So this would mean that in the late summer, early fall of 2016, Bruce Orr is telling Gaeta that he and his bosses want to make sure. Who was Bruce Orr's bosses? He was the number 4 man at the DOJ. He only had a couple of bosses. Yates, Mary McCord, maybe, Loretta Lynch. He was the number 4 man at the DOJ. And he said, me and my bosses want to make sure. So if that's true, then there's a lot of people in the DOJ who in their testimonials that we're currently reading through these transcripts, all were lying. Because Bruce Orr is saying that he and his bosses know all about the Steele dossier information, and they want to make sure some action's being taken on it. Yet we get all these DOJ officials saying that during that time frame they didn't know anything about it. Bruce Orr is saying he and his bosses want to make sure something's being done about it. You see how many lies we're talking about here? As I read through these transcripts, you can't believe it. Now, obviously, these transcripts are going back 3.5 years, when these people probably never believed that we would learn all the things that we've learned. The number of lies that John Durham has probably discovered in his investigation, it's got to be in the hundreds and hundreds of lies told by dozens and dozens and dozens of people. Just the number of perjury charges that he could lay on people's in the huge number. Multi-hundreds. Well, the Department of Justice has finally responded to the lawsuit by Lisa Page. You can read it on Conservative Treehouse, but essentially they summarize her application to the court as being meritless, filled with innuendo, rank speculation, with fatal flaws, and no overall valid argument. In other words, her case ain't going anywhere. Now, she knew this, so why did she file the case? Well, for the same reason McCabe filed a case. Because by having an open case, when she gets charged with crimes, and she knows she's going to be charged with crimes, she can say, well, two things. Number one, she can say, well, this is retaliation against me for filing this case against the DOJ. And she can say it's retaliation. And on the other hand, this can throw a wrench into the spokes of a prosecution by John Durham, because she will have an open case with the DOJ, which could kind of throw a wrench in the spokes, slow things down, complicate things, or whatever. So it's a legal tactic that Lisa Page is using, but the DOJ is not buying a bit of it. I understand that she is one of the people we've been hearing over the past couple days that Washington, D.C. law firms, the high-dollar law firms, are their phones are ringing off the hook in the last few days with people rushing to them for legal defense, criminal legal defense. One of them, we understand, is Lisa Page. Chuck Grassley. Grassley has now informed Obama that he is now a part of the Russia hoax investigation. Yep. To say in the least. He certainly is a part of the... Well, look, we already know this was a counterintelligence operation. Counterintelligence operation, as has been described by many federal prosecutors who've commented on this subject, is done on behalf of the president. It's not like a regular criminal investigation by the DOJ where the president may not even know about the thousands and thousands of criminal cases that are going on. But a counterintelligence operation is always with the advice and consent of the president. It's always done on behalf of the president in regards to national security. So a counterintelligence operation is very, very different than a criminal investigation. And so Obama would have had to have known about this from the very beginning. In fact, even before the beginning of Crossfire Hurricane, which we're told is July 31st, 2016. Of course, we all know it started much, much earlier than that. Or maybe the actual name of the investigation is Crossfire Hurricane started July 31st, 2016. But the activities that led to Operation Crossfire Hurricane were happening long before July 31st. Despite the fact that, again, all these guys have been questioned, they all lied when they said, nope, there was nothing going on before July 31st, 2016. And of course, we know that's all lies. Now, they might try to say, well, there was no FBI activity going on, and all the stuff that was going on before that was all being done by intelligence, CIA, Brennan. Oh, and by the way, something I mentioned earlier about Rick Grinnell delivering these documents to Attorney General Barr, which apparently are either the people who were unmasked or the people who did the unmasking, or both. One article I read is speculating that the people who did the unmasking were working for John Brennan and they were contractors. So I think we may be talking about two different things here. I think we are, and I don't know if Grinnell's got all of that, because remember, we had the 702 queries, which were being done by 3 private contractors, and I believe that was probably being done for CIA, John Brennan. But we also had all these unmaskings that were done, and I believe that would have come from within the Obama White House. Most likely, Susan Rice would have been the person to authorize something like that. The National Security Advisor would probably have to be the one to give the okay on the unmasking, especially of a presidential campaign, the president and his campaign team. And it would have had nothing, as Devin Nunes says, to do with any Russia investigation. It was just listening to their conversations about the campaign and things like that. So who knows, but I imagine in the next week or two that we will see the names of the people who did the unmasking. I think we will definitely get the names of the people who did the unmasking. I would love to see the names of the 3 companies or individuals who were doing the 702 queries for, most likely, Brennan. I'm not so sure that we will see the names of the people who were unmasked, because they're private citizens and they have a right to privacy. So I doubt that we're going to see the names of the people who were unmasked, but we'll get descriptions of them. They can say, oh, Trump's entire campaign team, but they won't say their names. But we should get the names of the people who did the unmasking. No reason to protect them. They're criminals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.